Should be a big thing for all of you, right? I'm assuming we have a segment of audience which is part NGOs and part others. Can I just get a show of hands of how many of you all are from NGOs? Just a show of hands. Okay, fantastic. So I have the right audience. Great. So I'm going to try and convince you over the next 45 minutes on why you should be doing individual giving if you're not doing it, and why you should be doing more of it if you're already doing it. Right? 45 minutes is really short to walk you through how to do it, but I'm going to try and do a little bit of why you should do, what you should do, and how you should do. So bear with me for the next 45 minutes and then we'll get to the questions. So first of all, just to lay context, So 4 categories of donors. I think this is something that we all know. There's government, there's institutions, the foundations, there's corporate CSR, and there's individuals. Individuals further can be broken down into retail and HNI. HNI, one simple definition I have is anyone who gives you more than 1 lakh a year, while an individual or somebody who could be one you are willing to visit, for proposal, for providing feedback report on at least twice a year. Right? So individuals split into retail and HNI. So how much do individuals actually give in India? Right? Let's try and understand that. So let me give you some hint first. In the US, giving by individuals is 74% of all giving. Giving by individuals is 74% of all giving. What do you think is the giving level in India? Just shout out. I mean, if you know, great. If you don't know, estimate. What do you think is the percentage in India of individuals giving? 20? 10, 20, 30?
Just as much corporate.
Just as much as corporate, so 50%? 50% individual, 50% corporate? Right, we're just going to talk between these two, right? Between corporate and individual. So individual giving is 44%. And this is not based on some survey, this is not based on interviews. This is actually based on data that's published by the government of India during every budget. 44% of all giving in India is by individuals. And I'm going to tell you now why corporate giving is overestimated and individual giving is actually underestimated. So let's understand. With corporate, approximate giving is about 25 to 30,000 crores. Barely 30 to 40% of CSR money must be going towards NGOs. But with individuals, 100% of the money is going to NGOs, only then they'll get a tax break, right? That's the thing. So corporate money goes to other places as well. And that's why if we talk about saying how much of it goes to NGOs as we understand, it's not a very large amount. But yet everyone is running after corporate. But with individuals, most people don't even claim tax benefit. Or I won't say most, but many people don't claim tax benefit. The general understanding is about maybe 60-70% of people claim and about 30-40% don't claim tax benefit. A lot of people have opted for new tax regime already and they don't get benefit. So the data does not show that, right? The data does not show that. Individual donation tax benefits are capped at 10% of income. Further, a lot of HNIs give from wealth. They're not giving from income. They're giving much more than 10% of income. So again, the data does not capture that, right? Further, many HNIs gives via shares, wills and bequests. Again, there is no tax benefit for it, so the data doesn't capture it. So fundamentally, individual giving is much more than the 44% that you are actually seeing out here. Right? And the share of individual giving is high and has been increasing as well. Right? So we've seen about 40%, 30%, and now it's about 44%, and that's what we said is underestimated. Over the last 5 years, corporate giving has grown by 48%, individual giving has grown by 69%. Right? So great growth in corporate giving, CSR has definitely grown, but what share are you getting? Individual giving, on the other hand, is all coming to you, and that's growing at 70%. So it's a huge market, growing very fast. What's our potential? Right? Generally, giving is measured as a percentage of GDP. In the US, that is 2.2% overall, 1.7% for individuals. In India, it's 0.6% overall, about 0.2 to 0.3% for individuals. Satwa report put it at about 0.24% of GDP. Right? So, as we move towards Viksit Bharat over the next 20 to 25 years and become a developed country, we will see our individual giving also grow from the 0.2 to 0.3% levels to 1% levels. And what does that mean in terms of opportunity? We will come to that. But before that, you are all aware, we have about 100 crore potentially earning people in India, or will be earning in the next few years. 100 crore potential audience. Everyone who's earning is a potential giver, at least. Many people who are not earning, children are giving. They are also there, but 100 crore is your potential market. Right? So on average, we've seen 45% of donations are by individuals, growing faster than corporates. 0.2 to 0.3% is GDP, it will grow to 1%. As it grows to 1% of GDP, we will see 18 to 20% growth in individual giving year on year. Corporate giving, on the other hand, will grow typically at a nominal growth rate of the economy, which is about a range of about 12 to 14%, essentially on a nominal basis. Right? So my point is, if you've not started on individual giving, it's a huge market, lots of folks, and it's going to grow faster. Right? So now's the time to get on it, get on the horse, and make sure you are also tapping into this amazing market. Right? So numbers, great, numbers are there. What are the other intangible benefits that you get out of individual giving? Right? So let's look at some of them. The big reasons a lot of people want to do individual giving is diversification. Right? You have corporates, you have CSR, you have institution, you diversify. So the idea is not to leave anything, right? Don't drop anything and do individual. You should do individual also. Great way to diversify. Stability. Individuals are much more stable in their giving. Also, if you lose individuals, like if you lose a corporate donor, you have 10 donors, get back another corporate donor, right? Typically 6 to 9 month lead time cycles. On the other hand, if you lose individual donors, you can lose 10 to 20% of individual donors in a year. But getting another set of 10 to 20% is that difficult, right? So a lot more stability in the overall pie of retail of individual donors. CSR is going to be capped at 2% of net profit, right? Most corporates are going to give you 2%. They're not going to give you more. They're not going to have bigger budgets. They can't have smaller budgets. However, individuals understand they're only giving 0.2%, right? We saw 0.2 to 0.3%. They don't have a cap. They don't have a limit. They can give much more, right? They do not have any top side. They do not have a loss as 2%, 3%. In the US, HNIs give 8 to 11% of income, according to a study done out there. So far higher ability to get money from individuals, not limited to a time span, right? Typically institutional funding, 3 years, 5 years, subject to annual reviews. Of getting not just money for 3 to 5 years, but lifetime. You have an opportunity to get multi-generational giving. We have lots of examples where we have children of parents in India, they're staying abroad, parents give to an organization, the children also give out. Right? So there are opportunities for multi-generational giving out here. The fourth and very amazing thing is fundraise. Which other segment of donors, you saw all the other segments, right? Government, CSR, institution, foundation. Which other segment of donors will fundraise for you? Right? Actually go out and raise money for you. Which other segment will refer other donors to you? Individuals do that. We've seen the marathon where individuals run and raise money, right? And there are various such opportunities that are available with individuals. And the last thing, which I think is the most important reason to engage individuals into your cause, is because you are doing something to change society. And the more and more people who join hands with you to do the same thing shows success for you. It creates ambassadors for you. It creates people who drive actual change in community, something that money cannot buy. Let me give an example of that as well. Right? There's an organization in Bombay which works with creches on construction sites, right? And there's a law that you have to put up a creche on construction site, but it's not typically done. They had a donor who knew the municipal commissioner of Bombay at that time, and through the municipal commissioner of Bombay, they managed to get an order passed to make that happen. Now, do you think any amount of money can get that kind of influence? Can make that kind of change? Because that's the change you want. You want to make sure that the children are provided creches and are having a way to learn, educate and be safe in those creches as well while their parents work. Right? Cannot just be done by money. Individuals bring more than money to the table. Right? So obviously they bring funds, that's what we're all here for. That's great. Right? So we've seen that they want to do, they do a lot. They can do much more beyond money, and they want to give more. So this is a slightly dated research report, but I think it holds true even today. Indians are showing the greatest consciousness to buy products from socially responsible companies. And if you see the list, this is a list of all developing countries. Right? So we are the top and we are top by a distance. Right? And every report that you can look at various different reports, they all seem to say a very similar thing. A Harris Presumer report said Indians are least cynical and most enthusiastic about driving positive change. Where a report, the CAF report is very well known, which talks about 84% of Indians are giving at least once a year. They have a larger definition of giving, which is giving money, giving time and giving resources. Right? But 84% of adults in India are giving, according to that report. We also have the largest number of givers by absolute numbers compared to any other country according to this report. I think it's about 198 million giving money, which is more than the second place, which is US, and third place, which is China. Right? Individual donations, I talked about saying we will see growth rates of 18 to 20% going forward for the next 15-20 years. In the past also we've seen that. Report by India Philanthropy, report by Bain and Dasra. Individual giving strong growth, 21% year on year for the last 5 years, right? Does not happen in any other form. But very interestingly, two reports said exactly this. Most Indian non-profits look to everyday giving. Everyday giving is another word for retail giving. Look to everyday giving only when other funding streams are inaccessible. Anyone wants to shout out when that last happened? COVID, perfect. Right? So what did COVID do? What did COVID do to retail and online giving? It gave it a huge fillip. A lot of y'all asked retail, a lot of y'all got money. How many of y'all tried to engage those donors afterwards? How many, and you would not get all of them retail, but how many of you tried and got some of them retail? Did you make an effort, or did you assume that this is COVID, so they gave, now they will not give? We saw both kinds of organizations that made the effort, that engaged with donors that they got during COVID, were able to retain them. They were able to grow their individual giving using COVID as a stepping stone. Right? So individual giving grew 43% during COVID, and all forms of online giving increased. Why? Because obviously there was lockdowns, social distancing, and led to greater online giving, different forms of payments, all helped to increase individual giving. So we talked about individual giving and we said it's two parts. Individual is HNI and retail. And let's understand what retail giving is now, right? What is retail giving, or as far as NGOs are concerned, retail fundraising? I look at it as three aspects. Raising small amounts of money from large number of donors on a regular basis. So if you are, I think the first two everyone agrees, small amounts of money, large number of donors, right? But the regular basis is what I have seen in my experience that most organizations do not do. We typically do one-off campaigns. We typically do a crowdfunding campaign once a year, maybe twice a year. But we are not doing retail giving in a manner which is consistent and regular every single day. The way we do other forms of fundraising, whether it's CSR, whether it's institutional. Okay? So what is it not? I think sometimes we don't answer what is not, and I'll just, what people told me, so I'm sharing that with you. It's obviously not generating funds from institutional corporates and HNI. It's also not generating money from retail stores. Somebody put that out, so I should clarify that. It's not fundraising from few people, right? Large number of people is an important criteria. You're getting money from large number of people. And as I said, it's not about running campaigns on a one-off basis. So one of the common questions or one of the common issues that most organizations tend to have is they find retail fundraising very expensive compared to ICH fundraising. I'm calling ICH as institutional CSR HNI, right? And the biggest reason why that is the case is because they do retail fundraising in a manner which is very similar to It's called the OPQRS difference between ICH and retail. So what does this stand for? First is outreach. How is the outreach difference between ICH and retail donors? In case of outreach for ICH, you typically do one-on-one, right? You write one mail to the corporate, one mail to institution. But in case of retail, you have a large number of donors or prospective donors, you write to them together. You use email marketing platforms, you use WhatsApp marketing APIs, you use WhatsApp broadcast list, or you have a group of donors on WhatsApp, you send it on WhatsApp. It's one message to a large number of people, right? So you don't do messaging to everybody. Second, P is proposal. All of you all, for corporates, if you have 10 corporates, you have to write 10 proposals, right? Minimum. In the format, font, style, wording, structure of the corporate that is required. On the other hand, with retail, it's one proposal for everyone. And it's not really a proposal. It's a story. It's a story that you tell. It's a story that you get your donors to emote with. And there is an ask that you make. Right? How many of you go to CSR donors and say, here's what I do, give me whatever you want. Do you do that? No, you say, right, I want 10 lakh rupees for X. But when we do it with individuals, I've often seen this, we just say, give whatever you want. Donors don't know how much to give. They have no idea what they should give. You need to have an ask. You need to be saying, give me 10,000 rupees to educate a child for a year. You need to be saying, give me 2,000 rupees to buy books for them. 3,000 rupees to buy uniforms. Asks are very important. But your asks are the same. They are not changing every year. Right? The programs are not changing. Amounts may change, inflation. But your asks are the same. So you create these asks or donation products as we call it. And it's the same thing. Every year, every time, no change. One-time effort. Right? Third, queries. If your institutional donor or ICH donor has a query, who will answer it? It will be the founder, CEO or a senior fundraising manager. You cannot delegate this to a junior person in your team. The relationship is far too crucial for that. Right? But in case of queries for retail donors, what's the number one query that you get from a retail donor? Anyone? What's the number one query? What queries do you get from retail donors? Where's my ATG? Absolutely. Right? Those are the kind of queries you get. And if you have the right systems, processes, technology in place, this is very easy to do. In my previous organization, we had 150,000 retail donors. Do you know how many people we had in customer care? Any guesses? Any guesses? I use this example commonly, so if you know the answer, please don't say. How many people did we have? 150,000 retail donors. 10, 200. Oh my God. Will be a very large NGO. 3, somebody said 3. We had half a person managing. Even though there's a nice forgot password out there. 80% of queries were, what is my password? Or how do I generate a new password? And this was 10 years ago. Right? That time we had templates, we would send the template. Today I'm sure AI will take care of that. I don't even need a human resource for something like this. So it's often assumed that because I spend a lot of time answering questions of 10 corporate donors, when I have 1,000 retail donors, I'm going to spend, I don't know where I'm going to get that time. But that's not true. You won't be spending that much time and you don't need to spend that time. It can be somebody who's much more junior in your team who could spend that time. Right? So that's with queries. Fourth, reporting. Obviously for corporates, every corporate, minimum 1 report, more likely 2, 3, 4 reports for every year. Right? Every corporate that many reports. On the other hand, with retail, you would do periodic updates on your programs. Maybe 4 in a year, but it's the same 4 reports that go to all your thousands of donors. All your thousands of donors. Right? And when I say donors, they could be donors, they could be prospective donors. So it's a standardized reporting approach. Next. Last is staff. So we've seen all of this and I've talked to you about saying how do you reduce time? Because you have to do things differently. So one, time reduction and the person doing it. These two things have to be correct for your cost to be low. Right? For ICES, you're obviously going to have founders, CEOs, senior management doing it. Retail donors can be done by a much more junior person. However, will need guidance from the founder, CEO, senior management. They cannot run on their own. Don't expect somebody to come in and just drive it. Right? But it can be done with a much junior person. This is how you reduce costs. What are some of the other myths in retail fundraising? Right? And these are the myths that also increase the cost of fundraising. So crowdfunding is retail fundraising is often the point that's made. And the third point that I made is retail fundraising has to be done regularly. Right? Regular is very important. Crowdfunding is one-off. Crowdfunding is great if you're getting your contributors, your donors to raise funds. Perfect platform. Not the right thing for NGOs to do. Right? A lot of times people want to avoid payment gateways and the cost associated because they believe that the cost of checks and bank transfers is lower. But how much effort have you wasted when you got a bank transfer in your account and you had no idea who it came from? Right? Then the CEO gets involved, the senior management gets involved. Everyone's trying to find out who's this donor who's giving me 10,000 rupees and lots of time and money gets wasted. Right? You must focus on building systems and processes using technology a lot when you do retail fundraising to keep costs also low. Right? I talked about donor support and that's not, right? So that's, you're not going to spend a lot of effort in that. Yeah, so people do a lot of social media work, right? Organic. Organic social media and raising money. Great for engagement, great for donor engagement, great for community awareness, not for fundraising. It works brilliantly when individuals do crowdfunding. Right now, even that shifted to WhatsApp. It also works if you're a well-known brand and you do paid marketing. Even well-known brands are not able to raise money using organic. They have to do paid marketing to raise money. And the last reason why a lot of us fail at the thought of doing retail fundraising is because we consider it unrestricted. Retail fundraising does not become unrestricted. How many of y'all will give money if you are told, give me 5,000 rupees, I will use it however I want? Will you give money? I'm seeing some nodding of heads, assuming no. Right? So if you will not give money and you are all retail donors in this room, why do you expect a retail donor to give you money? Right? So you can definitely talk about the organization and you can say I want for the organization in which it becomes unrestricted. And I think unrestricted is a very negative word. We must use the right terminology. It's flexible funding, right? Flexible is a more positive word compared to underserved. So use the terminology rightly and understand that retail donors, much like the CSR donor who wants 1,000 children educated in 10 lakh rupees, the retail donor also wants one child educated in 1,000 rupees, right? Why should they be any different? Just because they are unable to come to the ground and check your program, we should not be shortchanging them. Because when we do that, when we bring that mindset to our fundraising, it will be seen. People will know it, and that is what will make your retail fundraising a failure. You have to approach retail fundraising with trust, be truthful in your approach, and make sure that you are spending the money for what you asked. If you ask for general expenses, fair enough. If you ask for program expenses, then use it for program expenses and build all your overheads into it. Build your transaction charges into it. Build your allocated overheads, admin overheads into it. Retail donors are happy to pay. They don't mind it. But don't completely use the money for something else after taking it for something. And I understand at times you may need to do that. You may need to use it for a purpose which you've not taken it for. And for that reason, ask them. We've done that many times, and no retail donor or no individual donor refuses. As long as you're using money for a good cause, they're fine if the cause changes. Right? So I think this is very, very important, and I urge everyone to keep this in mind. So we covered the virtuous cycle of fundraising, again very well known. We acquire donors, we fundraise with those donors, and we need to report and engage. Many organizations that I go with and who come to me and ask me, how do I get new donors? My first question to them is, what are you doing to engage your existing donors? And the answer is nothing. So you are spending a lot of money on acquisition, you got fundraised, but no effort on engagement. At best, I send one report, I send one newsletter, I'm sending regular newsletters, but that is not enough in engagement. Because only if you engage can you repeat. And I think everyone knows this. Cost of acquisition of a new donor is much higher than cost of engagement or retention of an existing donor. And you've got to build lifetime value by engaging with donors on a consistent basis. Right? Because when you do this and you do a good job of engagement, your existing donors will also bring you new donors. Right? That is the value of engagement. So what we've done is we've come out with an approach. We've come out with a 4-phase life framework out here, which is list, inspire, fundraise, and engage. It's a 4-phase framework of how you can do retail fundraising. Right? Very briefly, list is creating prospective donor list. Inspire is about building your story, making your ask. Fundraise, actually going out and doing fundraising. And engagement, which for me is the most important thing in these 4 things. So why is creating a prospective donor list so important? Right? Your donations are a function of 3 things if you multiply them. Reach, channels, and the ask. Reach is the number of donors that you have, channels are how you reach out to these donors, and ask is your fundraising appeal, the story that you make. Now the ask, you can keep trying to improve it, but beyond the point there's no value in it. You're not going to get more, your programs are not going to change, your communication is going to remain similar. And donations are not going to increase because you have better ask. Beyond the point, right? There's obviously a hygiene level you need to get to. There are a fixed number of outreach channels, email, WhatsApp, social media. What is unlimited, at least in India, right, is the potential in increasing reach. 100 crore potential donors. How many of them can you reach out to? Can you know? Do you know? And can you keep building that network? This is an unlimited number. So your focus, after you've got channel and ask sorted out, is only to focus on reach. Channel and ask is one-time effort with little incremental effort every year, but reach is a continuous process that you keep doing. Right? And I would say, build a reach of at least 5,000 prospective donors before you start down doing the rest of the things. And everyone can do that. Simple way, go to Gmail, download contact list. Everyone will get 2,000 to 3,000 donors at least. Right? These are all people you've interacted with. Everyone's a potential donor. You need to ask everyone possible. Second aspect, inspire. Right? You obviously need to inspire, motivate your donors to donate. 2 aspects of story, typically a beneficiary story, community story. It can also be a story of a board member who's joined you. It can also be a story of an employee who's joined you. It can also be a story of a supporter, a fundraiser, anyone, right? You have various options. Once they're convinced they want to donate to you, they will come to your website and make a donation. That's where the asks come into play. You will have asked of what you want money for, and you have to have a simple enough way for people to fulfill that and make the donation. And obviously after that, fundraise, right? You put in all this effort, created a list, and written your stories, go out and fundraise, right? So how do you fundraise? You can either use a crowdfunding platform or set up a payment gateway on your own website. Just some numbers, crowdfunding platforms, you don't know it, but they can charge you for 5 to 20%. When you do it on your website, it's 2 to 5%. And this is because crowdfunding platforms will say they have 0% platform fees, but they will charge you for transaction charges, and they ask your donors to pay a tip. This tip is something you can actually get from your donors for yourself. If your donor who's giving to you on a crowdfunding platform is willing to give more to you, should you get the money or should someone else get the money, right? Very clear, you should get the money. How can you do that? And that's what having a payment gateway on your side can allow you the flexibility to do that. Right? So additionally, easy to get another 5 to 15% from your own donors. And the very interesting thing is, because the donor knows that they want to give to you, they don't mind paying this tip to you. In our experience, 60 to 70% of donors are paying this when it is opt-in. And when it is opt-out, 80 to 90% of donors are paying this. So it's a very simple way to get 5 to 15% extra from your existing donors. Right? Last is engage. So both online and offline activities are very key to engage with donors. We do newsletters, we do social media, we think it's enough, it's not. Also, how we do newsletters, how we do social media is very, very important. Right? So you need to have online, and I would advise every organization to have at least one offline activity. You have to figure out what that works for you, depending on your context, depending on your structure. One offline activity. I will give an example of one that we would suggest. But let's start with what it means for a newsletter. Right? First of all, I'm using the term newsletter so we all understand, but never use the term newsletter in your communication. Nobody likes to read a newsletter. Okay? So what can a 3-article newsletter be about? It can be a human interest story. It must be. You must have at least one human interest story, various different possibilities, various different formats, options. Second would be sector news. Donors are giving to you not because of your organization, but because of the area that you work in, because of the cause that you are working in. They are giving to the cause. And can you update them about the cause? Can you give them curated information about the cause, thereby increasing their knowledge about whatever they are supporting? If you can do that, they will treat your donation, they will treat your newsletter as a definitive source of information to keep themselves abreast, right? So this, I think, is very important. And the last thing, which normally takes our entire newsletter, is organization updates. Please understand, people do not care about your organization, they care about the work that you do, right? So organization updates, great. It's part of the work that you do, but it is 1/3 of your newsletter. It should not be all the articles of your newsletter. And the offline experience that we would talk about is essentially a donor day. This is one example. You will have to cater it based on whatever you're doing. But a donor day is a potential, is a very, very powerful thing where you could ask your donors to come and visit you, let's say on the 3rd Saturday of every month, right? And you curate a 2-hour program or a 3-hour program where you actually go about doing this. And this should be, you should have an introduction, you should have a, go around it, interaction with your beneficiaries, and then come back and do a debrief. It should be a well-defined process, SOP that you would do. So different channels for retail fundraising, basis your maturity stage. There's start, grow, and scale. Also low investment to high investment that you could think about. So you can start with low investment is online donations, email marketing, crowdfunding, almost free kind of options, very low cost. As you grow and move to the next level, you do WhatsApp marketing, social media marketing, and events as well. And as you scale up further and can invest more of the typical forms of doing direct mail, telecalling, face-to-face, other scale-up options. But we believe it's possible to scale up even without too much of a high investment through other models that could be used, wherein you tap into scaling into champion fundraisers to scale your donor list. Because like I said, more donors you have, the more funds you will raise, right? More people you have in your list, the more funds you will raise. So that could be about your employees fundraising, getting you new donors, volunteers fundraising, getting new donors, corporate volunteers who come and visit you. Are you taking down their contacts? Champion fundraisers we spoke about. Alumni beneficiaries, right? A lot of an organization that I'm aware of gets 1/3 of its annual revenue from alumni and beneficiaries, right? And just the last thing, there's a lot of confusion around what are compliance requirements for individual donors. So there is no difference in a compliance requirement, first of all, for Indian and foreign donors. It's the same thing. And you only need to collect this information. I mean, there's another myth which is only need to collect this information if there's a tax benefit. That's also not true. 3 elements you must collect: name, address, and nationality, right? Even if you don't have FCRA. If the donor wants a tax benefit, then collect PAN. Otherwise, PAN is also not important. And even if you don't have all this, it becomes what's called an anonymous donation. Anonymous donations are allowed under law up to 1 lakh or 5% of total income without paying any tax, right? So if you have a budget of 1 crore, you can get 5 lakhs of anonymous donation without paying tax. Even above that, you can collect. You'll have to pay 30% tax on that, but you can collect, right? So make sure that the way of collecting donation is the simplest and nothing more than that. So open to Q&A, and that's it from me, but just some last thoughts. Don't shy away from asking. You're not asking for yourself, you're asking for the work. Be bold, upfront, honest, and transparent. I think that is the most important thing. And work speaks for itself. A lot of people say work speaks, people will see, but you can also speak for it. And that's it. Can I take a few questions? Okay. Yeah. I will repeat the question.
Hello.
I will repeat the question. But please get to the question fast, right? So we can have more questions.
Hello.
So when we start out the journey, when people give you a lot of recommendations that you can do this, you can do that. Like when you start out, most of it is bootstrapped. So you need a lot of experience, at least 3 years to go for CSR. So you need to do this and that. Like any event that comes, you start doing it, and no matter what, you have to keep doing something and keep staying. Like there's so much of thing that you can do, and so much it's overwhelming sometimes. So what is like 3 steps that you can give me as very important to follow when I'm starting?
LIFE. Sorry, 4 steps I have.
4 steps. Okay.
Yeah, that's the 4 steps you follow. And this is very typical. Most organizations in their first 3 years, 0 to 3, will raise money from friends and family.
Right.
So in a sense, they're doing retail fundraising. 3 years onwards, you have access to CSR, institutional, so you move away and you forget about this. But typically 10 years down the line, you will realize that I now need retail to manage my cash flow better, for innovation, for other forms of funding, to have flexibility in funding. And very difficult for you to do that at that point of time because you've not set up the necessary systems and processes early on. So I would urge you that as you are in your journey today, set up systems and processes to do retail and hand it over to your team member. Founders should not do retail fundraising.
So for the crowdfunding, the payment platforms, what method do you suggest to go forward? If we can do it in our website now itself to
Yeah,
fundraise.
you can do it in your website as well.
But if we use Razorpay or something like that, we have to pay so what do you suggest for
You do it, pay it. It's
do
not
it?
a lot
It's
of money.
fine. It's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay, I can see you now.
Sir, first of all, I would like to thank you for the session that you conducted. It was really insightful for me. I have a question on the data that you shared of 45% individual donors. Do we have a breakup of their net worth and geographical representation?
Unfortunately, I've tried to get that, but the information has not been provided.
Oh, all right. Do we have any platform where we get it from?
you can only ask, you can ask the income tax authorities to give it to you.
All right.
Because this is based on their data.
All right. I have a request as well, sir. Post this session, if you can give me 5 minutes.
Sure.
Thank you very
Let's
much.
go to the
Thank you.
questions.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, or we
Yes.
can wrap?
Can you put more light on if my campaign goes to foreign countries and if some foreigner wants to donate and my organization is not having FCRA, so how is
So
it
you have to
possible?
ensure that whatever platform you're using doesn't accept that donation.
Okay,
That's what you have to ensure.
thank you.
Hello. What are the legal requirements to set up a retail fundraising?
There are no legal requirements to set up retail.
If I want to, or if someone
You can start doing it from day one of your organization.
Okay, and there are
Obviously, you need to be an NGO. You should have 12A
Registrations.
ATG. Those
Yes,
are
yes.
basic, but that's not
so
specific
the
to retail.
same rules will apply
Yes,
on this.
yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I've been told this is the last question. I think there are some regulations around what photos you can show or not show, but I think the general idea is that if it's not showing a photo in distress, in desperateness, it is fine and it should be done with the consent of the child. But there are some regulations. I'm not specifically aware. You could check for that if you're working in that domain. Okay. I'm sorry. I will take the questions. I'm here all day, so we can take it up. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for attending.